and welcome everybody. Thanks for watching again. Since I put the last couple video posts out, I've gotten some people emailing me, you know, what is aquaponics? And they read it and they kind of are saying, well, what are the benefits? What is it? Why do it? Do all this? So this is just going to be a quick thing. You can look at it all over if you want on what aquaponics is to me. Aquaponics can mean different things to different people. And for me, it is more of a term of a larger system. And I'll get more detail, but aquaponics can be as simple as growing herbs on top of a fish tank in a house. That is aquaponics too, but for me it's going to be a little larger system, not necessarily commercial. Basically from the standpoint of somebody wanting to provide fish and food for their family. So basically what is aquaponics? Aquaponics is the combination of aquaculture, which is raising fish, and hydroponics, soilless growing. And it's combined to aquaponics. And breaking it down, that's what it is. It has a symbiotic relationship. What's basically happening is the fish in the water are feeding the plants, and the plants are cleaning the water back for the fish. A symbiotic relationship between the two. And how that goes. Basically, what you have is what's happening, how the fish are feeding the plants is nitrification. Basically, the ammonias are getting turned into nitrates. What is happening is, I got these written down because I don't remember. There's two separate bacterias. One is nitrosomonas, okay? That converts the ammonia into nitrites, okay? So ammonia and nitrites are harmful to your fish, okay? But then there's the nitrobacter bacteria that converts the nitrites into nitrates. And nitrates are what the fish, you know, or excuse me, the plants will consume out of the water. And you can have extremely high rates of nitrates in the water before it's really harmful, you know, to your fish. But ammonias and nitrates are bad for the fish. It will kill them, you know, if levels get too high. That way in aquaculture systems, they have big filters and they do massive water exchanges all the time because of that. So, and it's recirculating. That's another key opponent of aquaponics, is you're recirculating the water through it. So basically, you have your ammonia coming out of the fish waste, and you also have ammonia coming out of their gills when they're breathing. And that's getting turned into nitrites. And the nitrites get to nitrates, and the plants clean the nitrates. They take them out for the plant food. So, but when you have an aquaponic system, there are some basic system parts to an aquaponic system. You don't need all of these, but most systems you will have some sort of this. One is otherwise known as called the rearing tank or the fish tank. That is just where you hold your fish. It can be a small aquarium, it can be 20,000 gallon fish tank, or anything in between. It's just your fish tank. The next thing you have is your settling basin. Basically, that is some way, and there's a bunch of different them out there. Basically, it is one way to get the solids out of the water shortly after they leave the fish tank. You know, there's clarifiers, there's a few of them out there. Solid, it's some type of solids removal. So there's a lot of them. The next is a biofilter, and some people don't have the settling basin or the solids removal or the biofilter. But the biofilter is a place basically that really lets the bacteria, excuse me, it's hot again today. It's another hot one. So I apologize, you can see me sweating a little bit. It's 100 degrees in the greenhouse right now. The The biofilter is basically a place where the nitrification happens. It gives it. A lot of times what it'll be is it'll be some kind of container with some kind of media, balls, a lot of pokey fingers sticking out or something like that. Basically give a place for that bacteria to grow. And what happens is they float around in the water and the bacteria adheres to these. And you want a lot of surface area because the bacteria works best when it's attached to those. And when they die, they knock into each other and the dead bacteria just float through the system and get settled out. But while they're alive, they're still attached to it. So that's why it is important to have a biofilter to have some kind of like aeration in there to keep the air up, and that also moves all the media around you having your biofilter. The next is the hydroponics area. That is however you're growing, and I'll get more into that in detail later. That is where you're growing the plants. And another thing is your sump. That is where all the water ends up when it pumps out. Now, some people use their fish tank as their sump. That's fine. If that's how your system is set up, that's okay. You know, the only downside of having your fish tank as your sump, your levels go up and down quite a bit. So that's the only downside. So just keep that in mind. So basically, and I told you a second ago, the hydroponics area, there's different types of hydroponics, okay? The first one you'll see a lot is the deep water raft. And that is basically where you got some body of water and it just floats, okay? You got something floating on there, usually styrofoam, and you got holes in it and plants grow in it. Usually your leafy crops grow in something like a deep water raft. The next is a recirculating, okay? This is not like your beds you see in a lot of them. Recirculating would be more like, described as more like a Dutch bucket. Basically, you got your plant roots in some kind of media, whether it's clay balls, vermiculite, whatever it is, and the water passes through them and it's just going. That's it. Then you got reciprocating aquaponics. That is what you see a lot of times. You got the beds, you got the bell siphon, the flood and drain. You see that quite a bit. That is your reciprocating aquaponics. And there are some more, some trickle feds, you know, like the, you know, there's the NFT, the nutrient, you know, film. That's usually looks like some kind of channel, and you got water running down and the roots are sitting in it. You got the horizontal pipes, you got the vertical pipes you can do. You can have just plants, pour the water into the plants and planters. That's systems right there too. So those are the different kind of hydroponics. Few of the things you want to keep in mind when you're doing aquaponics is it's most people try to overcomplicate it, but there's to keep these few things in mind, you won't have any issue. The first thing is try to keep when you're feeding your fish a consistent ratio. And there are formulas you use, and if you're interested about that, let me know, and I can show you a formula to use how much you should be feeding your fish. You take the fish weight and you put it through a formula for your type of fish, that kind of feed it needs, and you know how much to feed it, but you want that to be consistent. The next thing is, a lot of times you got to supplement iron, potassium, and calcium in your system. You cannot get those all the time into some systems. So if there's something lacking, you do have to add those, and you just can't add stick an iron, an old nail, and let rust go into your system. It's the wrong kind of item. It has to be a chelated iron. Otherwise, it really won't be taken up in the plants. The next thing is make sure you have good aeration. It's great. A lot of times you can do great with the splash techniques, but I will always have aeration of some kind, just because plants like having a lot of oxygen in the water too, and you cannot put too much oxygen in the water for the fish. And me being down south, in perspective, you know, in Texas, is it gets hotter, and the hotter it is, the less oxygen is in the water, so it just helps out. So when in doubt, get an aeration. They're inexpensive, they run low wattage, it's almost no power usage and everything like that. The next thing is remove your solids, some way, shape, or form. If you watch another one of my videos, you'll see a problem I had with ammonia is it all came down to my solids removal was working too good, you know, if that's a problem. And I didn't clean it up soon enough, and I was starting to get a spike. So make sure you remove the solids. Solids in your system can make it bad. Now, if you're using the flood and drain technique, a lot of those solids, if you don't have a solids removal, will end up inside of your bed, which is fine. You know, it's fine. But put some worms in your bed. The worms will eat that waste and make nutrients so the plants can take that up. So put some good worms in there, some good red worms inside your fill-in media after it's been there, you know, a month or two to make sure the fish have something to eat. You know, probably a few months, 3 to 5, and you'll be fine. Those solids will be gone if you don't have a normal solids removal. Next thing is be careful of what kind of media you use. The best thing you can probably use is just plain old 3/4 inch river rock. Great. The only downside, it's heavy and it's harder on your hands. That's why a lot of people use the clay beads. I'm also a big fan of the expanded shale. You know, if you can get the 3/4 inch expanded shale, it's great. If you got the 1/8 inch, it's a little harder, but you can get the 3/4 expanded shale. That's better yet because it has more surface area for bacteria, is what we were talking about earlier. And you don't want to get anything like limestone or anything like that, because that will offset your water and your stuff in your water. The next thing is when you're running your plumbing and your hydraulics for everything, oversize your pipes. If you think, yeah, I'll get away with 3/4 inch, do a 1 inch or 1 1/4, because you will get buildup over time, and you never want that as a stoppage. So whatever you're thinking you're going to need, use bigger. I was thinking I was going to be okay with 3/4 inch everywhere. I just went 1 inch pipe everywhere. I don't have to worry. So oversize your plumbing when you can. Try to use biological pest control. I talked about that in my other thing. It just helps everything out if you're keeping up on the maintenance using biological control, because you don't want to use poisons or sprays inside because it'll hurt the fish. Even if you use some of those that are considered organic, you know, and they're approved by the Organic Administration, you have to do your homework to see how much you can add so it's not too much so you don't harm the fish, because a lot of that stuff will kill your fish. So use biological control as much as you can. And like I said, the first biggest step is if you have a greenhouse, close it up, put screens up if it's open. That will help do most of your stuff right there. The next thing is make sure you have enough biofiltration. If you have a smaller system, you might not need it, but if you have a larger system, get a biofilter of some kind. It's not that if you already have the aeration for your fish tank, split those, come out, put a hose in a tank, get some of that media of them, you're done. All it does is it helps out. It will not do harm. The next thing is watch your pH. This is going to be up to you where you want your pH. It's going to depend on what you're growing and what kind of fish you have, but most of the time you want to be 6.1 to 7, let's say. That's for most of the time you want in there. I'm a big fan of the 6.2 to 6.5 or 6.6 just because the plants are happier right there, and my tilapia, there's no difference with my tilapia between 6.1 and 6.9. So I'm going to keep the fish happy. But your pH is 6 or lower, or mid 7s and higher, those bacteria, those good bacteria that convert it, aren't happy, and they won't start producing and they won't do as good. So control your pH. Don't have radical swings in pH, just gradually change it. You probably only want to change it a 0.1 a day or maybe a 0.2 a day max. So if you're at 6.8 and you want to get down to 6.6, do it in 2 days, because a harsh pH, you know, will kill your fish. So be careful of that. And the last thing I want to talk about aquaponics is your inputs. Your only really inputs you do to your system, there's two. One is feed, your fish feed. Use a good quality fish feed. You know, when you do that, if you make your own, that's great. Just make sure you are having a good feed and you're feeding your fish regularly. You don't want them to starve or anything like that. They can go a few days, 2-3 days. If you get an ammonia spike, stop feeding for a couple days, and usually it comes down on its own. but that's also could be an indication of something else. It could be, if you have fingerlings, it's harder to tell with the little fingerlings if you have a dead fish because they'll flow in the current a lot of times in there. I had one last week. I couldn't tell. And he could have been in there for a day, but I found out, for me with fingerlings, and this is with me, every night, as soon as it gets dark, I come out with a flashlight and I look in the tank. For me, it's a lot easier to tell at night with the flashlight, shine it in my tank. Here's my fish tank, as I am right here. I can tell immediately if they're dead or not. So every night, as soon as it gets dark, I check it out. It's fine. I'm good to go. Daytime, it seems to be a little harder to tell if they're floating in the current or, if they're dead. So you will get ammonia spike with the dead fish and with buildups of solids too. And you can get a spike in pH if you have a lot of solids and stuff that aren't taken care of. Your next input is water. You don't use much water. Matter of fact, that's a great thing about hydroponics, and you're basically hydroponics here. And with aquaponics or hydroponics, you're only using 10% of the water you would if a soil base. So, for instance, if you grow product X, and during the season it took 100 gallons to grow that, 100 gallons of water to grow that crop. Inside a hydroponic or aquaponic system, you're only using 10 gallons. That's a great thing about it. So you do have input of water, albeit a small amount. You do have a little input of water. That is basically what aquaponics is, real concise, real there. You don't need all these systems like I was talking about. You can have a great thing with, like I was saying, you just have an aquarium in the house and you're growing herbs on top. Great, pretty cool. So that's my opinion on this. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Any comments or concerns, just let me know. If you have any questions, email me. And about this or any of my others. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Everybody have a great day.